Addiction doesn't just knock on the door, it sneaks in, takes the wheel, and before you know it, you're watching your life crash while you're still sitting in the driver's seat. By the time I realized I had a problem with alcohol, it had already taken over. I was showing up to life, but the real me was gone. That's exactly how addiction felt, dead on arrival while my body was still moving. This is the DOA and Thriving podcast from Uberbad, a 3-part series on the 3 things that almost destroyed me: divorce, obesity, and addiction. We covered the O and the D. Today, we're closing it out with the A, addiction, the one that nearly finished me off for good. This isn't a clean story. It's messy. It's dark. It's painful, but it's real. So here we go.
I went down to that river, washed my sins for free. The devil's on the other bank, staring back at me. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a dead man.
Addiction didn't start the first time I took a drink. That's the lie I told myself for years. It was a slow, quiet breaking, a culmination of everything that came before: the divorce, the custody battle, weight going up and down, the fear of never being enough or never finding love again. I thought I was doing everything right. I was trying to live right spiritually and religiously. As I said previously, I wanted to get remarried and have more kids. I was putting in the work, or at least what I thought was the work, but it wasn't happening. The longer it didn't happen, the more I felt sorry for myself. Started feeling entitled. Why not me? I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do. The more entitled I got, the further away I drifted from God. I got angry at him. I blamed him. And eventually I decided, fine, if you won't give me the life I want, I'll take the reins, make it happen myself. And that's where it all went wrong. I found myself at a club I had been to dozens of times before. I'd never taken a drink there. I was always the designated driver, making sure my friends got home safe. But that night, the anger and resentment had reached a tipping point. I saw a group of people I knew that partied, walked up to one of them and said, "I want a drink. What do you recommend?" He took me to the bar and ordered some shots called Copper Camels. They were a butterscotch liqueur and had some other things in it. I don't know exactly what it was, but man, the second that sweet butterscotch hit my tongue, it was like I was a kid again, going through my grandma's bowl of Brock's candies, looking for the yellow wrapped butterscotched ones. It felt warm. It felt like home. I had to have more. By the end of the night, I don't even know how many I'd had. I was talking to girls, making new friends, laughing louder than I had in years. It opened up a whole new world. My friend drove me home from the bar that night. I was so drunk, I barely knew where I was. So she let me stay on her couch and let me sleep it off. And the next evening, the text messages started coming in. Invitations to things I had never been invited to before. In my own mind, I'd achieved rock star status overnight. Parties, bars, new friends, girls. It was crazy. I started out as a weekend warrior. I would stay sober during the week because I had to work and take care of my son. But eventually, there was always an excuse. Thursdays turned into pre-weekends. Wednesday became karaoke night. And I thought I was the greatest entertainer alive when I got on the mic. I was tipping DJs to skip the line, slipping bouncers 20s or 50s, so I never had to wait outside the bar to get in. Everywhere I went, people wanted me to get them in too. In my own head, I had made it. I was living the dream. As time went on, the parties got harder and longer. I tried drugs I never thought I would ever try. Ecstasy, or MDMA. They called it Molly. I even tried cocaine. Thankfully, the hard drugs were not my thing and didn't take hold of me. But I loved the alcohol because I thought I was in more control. Boy, was that a lie. I'd created a completely superficial life that only existed when I was drunk. I'd walk into a bar and girls would run up and jump into my arms like they were excited to see me. But really, they just knew I was about to open the bar tab and drinks were on me for the rest of the night. Realistically, it was costing me a fortune, mostly on credit cards. I was maxed out, barely covering bills after payday, sick all the time, and dragging myself out of bed for work. Thankfully, but also cursedly, I worked from home, so I didn't have to go into the office and have everyone smell the booze on me from the night before. Eventually, it became an everyday thing. I told myself I wasn't a real alcoholic until I started drinking at home by myself. Sure enough, that's what happened. I'd sit at my desk counting the minutes until it was an acceptable time of day to pour that first drink. I made a fool of myself everywhere I went. Friends stopped wanting to hang out because I had become a disaster and a liability. I drank and drove constantly. I'm lucky, truly lucky. I never hurt anyone. I got 2 DUIs that cost me over $20,000. Court-ordered 12-step programs that didn't take. Attorney fees, fines, SR-22 insurance. Life went downhill fast, and I was still in the driver's seat. Relationships fell apart because the women I dated could see I drank too much. They'd tell me if I wanted to keep seeing them, I needed to get help. But when you're only doing it for someone else, it doesn't stick. I even went to an AA meeting once with a friend. He and I were talking earlier that maybe we do drink too much and we should think about cutting back. So we went to a local meeting. We heard people share stories that were absolutely heartbreaking. And you would think that would have scared us straight. Instead, we walked out after the meeting and said, that hasn't happened to us. We are nowhere near any of those things. We still have our jobs, our families, our homes. We're good. So what did we do then? We went straight to the bar and got drunk. Yeah, we didn't have a problem. It eventually became such a chore to keep the party going. It was more I had to do it than I wanted to do it. It controlled every aspect of my life. I didn't think I could do anything if I wasn't drunk. It took over my life. The pre-party, the bar, the after-party. It was all so much work. I got tired. I even got injured and had a life-threatening scare. I injured my back so bad that I could barely walk. It was so painful. I couldn't sit in my chair for work. So I laid on the floor with my computer. I became so sedentary with not much movement that I developed a blood clot in my leg called a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis. One day that blood clot traveled up into my heart and lungs. I was struggling to breathe. I was at my girlfriend's house at the time. I went to her, told her I needed to go to the hospital. She was like, no, just lay down and rest. It'll be fine. Not this time. I knew it was serious. I said to her, I'm the last person who wants to go to the hospital, but I needed to go, and fast. I got in the car and she started driving me to the nearest hospital. I was deteriorating quickly. By the time I got to the hospital, I couldn't even walk. I needed a wheelchair to get me into the emergency room. They got me checked in and in the bed and ran some tests. My friend overheard the doctors looking at the imaging and they said it was a DVT blood clot. She said she overheard them say it was one of the biggest they had ever seen. I can't confirm that, but just took her word for it. Either way, it was scary. And luckily, I got to the hospital when I did. They put me on a clot buster IV, and the hospital I was at wasn't a trauma center. So they loaded me up into an ambulance, and with sirens roaring, they rushed me to the main Trauma 1 hospital in the area in Murray, Utah. I spent a few days in the ICU till everything was all clear and they let me go home after about a week. I was on oxygen and blood thinners for a couple of months after that. You'd think a scare like that might make me rethink my habits and take my health more seriously, but it didn't. I managed to not drink for a couple of weeks after, but then slowly got going again. I started the negotiating tactics us alcoholics do when we think we are managing our alcohol intake. I said, I'll just drink a glass of wine or sip on a beer. Stay away from the hard stuff. But it didn't matter. You can get just as drunk off the lower alcohol content beverages as you can the higher content. Just takes more of it. That's what I did. I drank more so I could get to the level of drunk I always wanted to be at, where I was completely numb and ready to pass out and black out. Before long, I was back on the hard stuff and getting drunk as fast as I could each time I poured myself a drink. Now, through all that, I was not able to complete one of the items I was sentenced to do for my most recent DUI conviction. I was supposed to complete 100 hours of community service, but being laid up in the hospital and the injury to my back, I wasn't able to complete it, and the bill was due. So with my oxygen tank in tow, my attorney and I went to see the judge to see if we could get an extension or a different judgment to complete the requirements of my sentencing. So the judge showed lenience on me. Instead of the community service, she allowed me to complete 4 days of house arrest with an ankle monitor. I wasn't allowed to leave my house for 4 days. I went and had the ankle monitor put on, and the agency that monitored my location said, "You got 2 hours to get to the store and get everything you need, and then you can't go past your front doorstep for the next 4 days." That was harder than you think it sounds. Being caged up at home without being able to leave was actually prison. I'd stayed home many days before without really going anywhere. But when it is forced and you know you can't leave or you will get in trouble, it's a whole different ballgame. I was losing my mind, but not enough to give it all up just yet. I remember waking up after one blackout and grabbing my phone. My heart dropped when I saw what I had done. I had set a picture of myself with a gun to my head. I don't even know who I sent it to or why. I would never have pulled the trigger. But the fact that I was so far gone that I pointed a gun at myself and took a photo just to get some kind of attention, that was one of the lowest, most terrifying moments of my entire life. It showed me how sick I had become. I was completely out of control, and I was scaring even myself. Things started hitting different after that. And finally, it all caught up to me. I remember being at home and a neighbor came by and we started talking, having some drinks, talking about some things that were going on with a girl I dated. and a buddy of mine. And apparently they had started seeing each other. Now, this didn't upset me. It was actually a blessing in disguise. But I didn't want to be out around town and see them together. That would send me over the edge. So my neighbor left, and I poured another stiff drink. But it wasn't having the same effect. And at that moment, something in me changed. I had reached that emotional drunken state where I couldn't hold back the tears. I was hurting so bad from this life I had been living for so many years. And I'd finally had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I sat on the floor in my living room crying like a baby. And I picked up my phone and called my sister. Through the sobs and the sniffles, she said, "What's wrong?" I said, slurring my words, "I can't do it anymore. I need help. I don't want this life anymore." That is when I had completely and totally surrendered. I was finally ready. Even in an extremely inebriated state, I was ready to make a change. And God knew it. And He went to work for me. My sister said, "How can I help?" I told her, "I need to get out of here. I can't be here in Utah any longer." She said, "I think that is a great idea. I'm sure our brother who lived in Arizona would let me come stay with him as long as I needed." So that is exactly what I did. That was September 26th, 2017. The last time I had a drink of alcohol. The next morning I woke up with a raging headache. I called my boss and told him I needed to take a personal day and that I was headed to Arizona to live for a little while. He said, "Do what you gotta do. I will help you however I can." So I grabbed some bins and literally went into my closet. And with both arms stretched out, I emptied my closet as fast as I could into the bins. Loaded everything into my car, locked up my house, told my neighbor I'd be gone for a while and to keep an eye on the place. And I was off. I stopped at my mom's house on my way down south, tell her what I was going to do, and to say goodbye to her. That made her so happy. So I got on the road. I called my brother, said I needed a place to crash for a bit to get my head straight. He said, "Come on down." Again, God was answering the call, left and right. I left a brand new townhome that I had just built a year prior to go and stay with my brother in his spare bedroom that he and his son used as a storage room. And it had a mattress on the floor. And that was my new room. And I couldn't have been more grateful to have it. I unpacked my car, got my work area set up in their front room. And for the first time in years, I was ready to make some changes. And that's when people started coming into my life that God put in my path to help me. Because of that surrender and deep desire to change, what happened is something you hear in recovery. And I think it's an old Buddha saying or proverb that says, "When the student is ready, the teachers appear." I'll say that again. When the student is ready, the teachers appear. And one by one, the teachers were coming forth. My little sister also lived in Arizona, in the same neighborhood as my brother. I asked her if she would set up a meeting with the bishop of her ward. She did without hesitation and got it set up that next day. So I went in to meet with him. I was reluctant to even walk into the church because I didn't feel worthy to be there. I'd done so many horrible things. The shame and guilt was overwhelming, but my desire to change was stronger, and God knew it. I sat down in the bishop's office after we shook hands and made introductions, and I immediately broke down in tears. I said, I need help. I can't do this on my own. I'm an alcoholic. I've done so many bad things. I don't even feel like I deserve to be here. And God spoke through him. He looked at me, said exactly what I needed to hear. Let's get you the help you need. Let's work on the main problem that's causing all these other problems, and we'll worry about everything else later. That was God's words to his mouth, to my ears. Exactly what I needed. I didn't need a full recounting on all my sins right then. I needed help with the addiction, because that was the root of everything else. He pulled my records immediately into his ward, got me under his purview, said the ward could help pay for a recovery program if I needed it. I told him I wanted to pay for it myself because it wouldn't mean as much if it was just handed to me. He respected that, and he immediately set me up with a therapist. He was able to get me in with the next day. The bishop said a prayer with me, and in that prayer he said, the Lord loved me, and that he loved me as well, and that he wanted to see me through all of this. So we set up weekly meetings to check in on my progress. I will never forget what this man did for me. He saved my life. He was exactly the man for that moment in my life that I needed, and God made it happen. So the next day I went to see the therapist he recommended, and the therapist listened to my story and what I was looking to get help with. The therapist said he wasn't the right fit for my situation, that he specialized in other areas, but he knew someone who he thought could help me. He referred me to the owner of Renaissance Recovery in Gilbert, Arizona. I called him as soon as I left that office. I explained my situation, and he invited me to come in. Turns out he was a member of my faith, which helped me feel more comfortable. He shared his own powerful recovery story, and I knew I was in the right place. He recommended his intensive outpatient program, IOP. It was a Monday through Thursday, 6 to 9 program, 9 p.m. program, with group therapy, drug testing, and weekly one-on-ones. It was perfect because I could still work during the day. I couldn't afford to lose my job and take an extended leave of absence. So this was on a Friday, and the following Monday I went in and got all signed up. My insurance luckily covered 2/3 of the cost. My mom helped me with the rest, but I paid her back as soon as I could. I got all the materials, signed all the papers. Now I had to follow through, and my first session was that evening. So as I was driving over there for my first session, guess who showed up? The little devil showed up on my shoulder, loud as ever, trying to persuade me. You don't need this. You've got this. You're good. This time, you'll get it right. I'd be lying if I said I completely ignored it, because he was cunning and persuasive, to the point I actually reached a compromise. I told myself I'd go check it out, sit and listen for a session, then return the materials and say it wasn't for me. I walked in, got drug tested, and sat down in the group meeting room. The therapist welcomed everyone and started going around the room, having group members report on their weekend and how they were doing and feeling. When it got around to being my turn, I started talking as if I was doubting needing to be there, saying I hadn't really hit the rock bottom I had pictured in my head. The loss of my job, my home, my family, that is what I imagined rock bottom looked like. Now, I had lost a lot of money, my dignity, my self-respect, was extremely unhealthy and allowed myself to get overweight, which I promised myself I would never do again. But it happened. That therapist looked at me and saw right through my game. She said something I'll never forget. Why do you have to hit that bottom you have made up in your mind before you realize you have a problem? Why can't where you are right now be your bottom? Because if you keep digging, you will hit that bottom. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So why not stop digging? That hit me like a Mack truck. That devil got flicked off my shoulder, and I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. It was time to stop digging. Because I didn't want to lose all those things that I imagined in my head would be bottom. The program made me realize how far I had fallen and really helped me put the pieces back together. Taught me new ways to cope and deal with things in life, that I didn't need alcohol to numb and escape. Taught me I needed to face the things that were bothering me in my life. Taught me that I had to get right with God, and He would fix the wreckage that I left behind me. Man, if I could have that program every day of my life now, it would be great. But that wasn't possible, nor was it affordable for me. Once I was done with the program, well, it was time to go back home to Utah. That's when the real test began. I thanked my brother and nephew for helping me. Said they played a part in saving my life as well. I told my little sister I loved her, and even my mom had moved down to Arizona during that time to live with my sister, and so I saw her and told her how much I loved her and was headed back home. I called that bishop as well and thanked him for everything he had done for me and that I would never forget him. Let him know he saved my life. I actually ran into him a few weeks back at my niece's wedding. I was almost brought to tears when I shook his hand and gave him a hug. I thanked him again for all that he had did for me. And he, being the humble man that he was, said, "That wasn't me. That was all you and the Lord. I was just his instrument." He surely was that instrument, and he played a perfect angelic tune to give me the help I needed and on the right track. So back to Utah I went. Now, when you're in a program, it's a little easier to stay straight because you're held accountable. Drug tests, check-ins, structure, going back to familiar places, and the possibility of seeing people who I partied with was scary. So when I got home, I immediately called the bishop in my neighborhood. They had just split the ward and he was freshly called. He didn't get an easy stroll into his new calling. I immediately put him to work. He didn't hesitate to take on the challenge. He was another teacher God put in my path. He welcomed me with open arms and said, "I'm glad you're here. God is glad you're here. He loves you. We're going to get you the help you need to get you back on the right path." So we went to work, set up weekly meetings. He told me if I do the things we discussed, that my life would be blessed. that the joy of God would return to my life. And I knew that was true. And I was excited to start working with him. The road to repentance wasn't easy, but so worth it. And it felt so good to eventually be relieved of all the pain and sorrow I had caused. So I left there feeling good, but still a little uneasy about being back home. Now, that next Saturday, I went to the gym. I ran into an old friend, someone I knew who was in recovery. It wasn't by coincidence he was there. I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that's God's way of remaining anonymous. Now, I didn't know him really well. He was married to a gal I went to high school with. She even hung out with me and my friends for a little bit when they were going through some of the struggles due to his addictions. But he got himself sober and back on the right track. They have a beautiful recovery story. They are truly inspirational to me and still a big part of my recovery journey to this day. But anyways, I told him that I had just returned from Arizona, that I did an IOP program down there. And yet again, another teacher God put in my path. He got my number. He gave me a list of meetings that he attended, invited me to go with him. So I did. I met up with him at a couple of meetings, and then he gave me a couple of names and phone numbers of people who might be a good fit to be my sponsor. So I called one of the numbers he gave me. This man answered, and I told him what I was looking for and that I needed a sponsor. Not gonna lie, asking another man to help me stay sober was a very humbling experience. He didn't say yes right away, so we met at a coffee shop. I told him what I was looking for and what my story was, and he talked about his recovery journey. We really connected, had a lot in common. So he accepted the task of being my sponsor. And again, another teacher to add to the list. So I started working the steps. I admitted to him I was an alcoholic, and I believed the power greater than myself, which is God, could restore me to sanity. Made amends to the people I could think of. Went through the big book and the 12 and 12. It was just what I needed to keep me on the path to recovery. So I was doing it. Going to meetings regularly, meeting with my sponsor, meeting with my bishop. I could see life really starting to improve, little by little, every day. I loved going to meetings. There's a lot of little sayings in AA that before never resonated with me until I actually was doing recovery for me and all the right reasons. But one of the sayings that used to drive me nuts was one day at a time. That one used to make me so mad. I got tired of hearing it. I didn't just want one day. I wanted 10 years. I wanted this addiction so far in the rearview mirror that I didn't want to think about it anymore. But there again, it's my mind playing games on me. What I think? Could go to a meeting one day, then go to sleep and fast forward 10 years into the future and expect to have the impact that it has on my life? No way. If I didn't work the program one day at a time and put in the work, I was not going to stay sober. And that one day at a time saying all of a sudden became my way of life. I had to keep it simple. I couldn't try to force or control the future and make it try to happen so fast. I could only control what was right in front of me and at that point in time. Any more than that, I would not be sober today. One day at a time. They say in recovery, days will get you weeks, weeks will get you months, and months will get you years. But years doesn't guarantee you another day. And that has stuck with me. Nothing is a guarantee. If you don't continue to work at it, that is the key to my life today. I have to work for everything I get. And that is a good thing because I appreciate all of it. Now, working one day at a time, I've been sober for 8 years and 8 months, just following that plan, one day at a time. And most importantly, by the grace of a loving Father in heaven. Now, today, I don't work a perfect program, nor do I go to as many meetings as I probably should. But I do have a set list of daily habits that I don't miss on, and it is the same every day. Well, at least Monday through Friday. On the weekends, it's a little different because I do allow myself to sleep in, and so that throws the schedule off a little bit. But I still make sure I do all the things I have been doing for several years. So this is what works for me. You got to decide what works for you. But make a list of things to do and be consistent. Consistency is the key. And forming these habits really have helped me stay on this journey of recovery. Because there isn't an ending destination on this journey. The destination is in the journey. So here it is. First, I get up around 6:30 a.m. every morning. I make my bed, and I get my butt to the gym. I have to get my body moving and the blood flowing. Gets everything ready for the day. And after the gym, when I get in my car, I always put on scripture to get connected to God. Listen to one chapter, and it really sets the tone for the day. Third, I get home and take my vitamins. I go into my office and I get the daily ponderable email for recovery. I read through a few sections, not the whole thing, but the pieces I like. So I'm always doing something with recovery. And then fourth, I hit my knees. And thank God for giving me one more day. And then I'm ready to start work. I work from home, so I get logged in, and now that my body and mind are right and I am connected to God, I can battle the day. And then when the day is done, and hopefully I didn't screw up too badly, and if I did, I make amends for it quickly. And when it is time to turn in, I wind down with a crossword puzzle. I listen to another chapter of scripture, and I pray one more time to give thanks for letting me hit the pillow with another sober day. And then I go to sleep, wake up, and do it all over again. It's not perfect. It's not pretty. But it works for me. I'm only trying to make it through the present day. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, I hope this can help even one person out there. I hope you know that you can do hard things, that you can overcome life's most difficult challenges if you are willing to put in the work and turn your life and will over to the love and care of a loving God. With Him, anything is possible. I am now remarried to a beautiful, loving, and supportive wife. I have 4 awesome stepkids, an amazing son and beautiful daughter-in-law who have made me a grandpa to the cutest, most incredible grandson I could ever ask for. That is my why. I wouldn't have any of this if I hadn't fought those demons head on, if I didn't continue to fight them every single day. By the grace of God, I am still standing, and I am thriving. Every day is a new day, a new challenge, a new adventure. So that's my story. DOA, divorce, obesity, and addiction. 3 things that almost destroyed me. But by the grace of God, I am still here, and I'm living a life I never thought was possible. If you're listening to this right now and you're in the middle of your own battle, I want you to hear me. God loves you. He hasn't given up on you, and neither have I, even if I don't know you yet. You can do this. There is hope. There is healing, and there is a better life waiting on the other side. If today's episode hit you, share it with someone who's battling addiction. Let them know they're not alone, and they can get through it. Come find me at ubnation.com. And if you want real community and daily support, download the UB Nation app from the Apple App Store. You can find the link at ubnation.com. Thank you for listening to my DOA and Thriving story. I'm Steve McGivern, and this is the Uber Bad Podcast. Until next time, keep showing up, even on the days you feel completely DOA. That's exactly where thriving begins.
Nothing in my coffin, can't you spare one more? I gotta look pretty when I'm knocking down heaven's door. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a dead man walking.